Well, I guess since we're here on television right now, I think that might be a little foreshadowing of what JFK did.
Sports Broadcast Act of 1961. He signed it into law. He didn't come up with it. Pete Rozelle lobbied Emanuel Seller, who I believe was the congressman from Brooklyn since the time of the Declaration of Independence at that time. He was old, really, really old. Rozelle and others went before Seller's House Committee. That got through in 2 days about the Sports Broadcast Act. They went to Esther Kiefhauer in the Senate. That went through in a day. It got to John F. Kennedy's desk on September 30th, 1961, which I have proposed as a national sports holiday because basically that bill allowed the National Football League to bundle all 14 teams to sell them as one, the 14 teams, to the highest bidder, which in those days was NBC and CBS. CBS won. And that was the turning point for television and all sports, and the American Football League eventually would become a benefactor or beneficiary of that after Rozelle re-upped with CBS in 1964. NBC was so upset about that David Sarnoff called Sonny Werble and said, I'm going to make you the American Football League. We're going to put you on the map. He gave Sarnoff the same deal that CBS gave the NFL. With that, Sonny signed Joe Namath. AFL teams had money to sign all kind of players. The merger takes place on June 8th, 1966. It's ratified by Congress in August of 66, and Lyndon Johnson signs the bill into law in October of 1966. As a side note, Pete Rozelle had to lobby Congress. Senator Russell Long from New Orleans and Hal Boggs from Louisiana as well. And Rozelle basically bought the merger by selling a franchise to New Orleans in exchange for their votes. Kennedy did one other thing. Not Kennedy per se, but what was the last team to become desegregated in the National Football League?
Well, I can answer that because that's actually one of my talks when I go to universities, which is none other than the Washington Redskins.
The Washington Redskins under George Preston Marshall, who was a racist and never hid it. Stuart Udell, the Department of the Interior under Kennedy, took a look at the lease that Marshall signed with the D.C. authority at that point and basically told George Preston Marshall that you have to hire Negro players at the time. I just did an interview with John Wooten, who was with the Cleveland Browns, who basically told me Bobby Mitchell was the perfect guy to integrate the Washington Redskins. And with that, the Washington Redskins football franchise was integrated. Ironically enough, Wooten ended up with the Redskins in 1968. He said there were two franchises nobody wanted to go to in the NFL if you were a black player. One was the Washington Redskins, the other the Dallas Cowboys.
The teams of the South.
The teams of the South. And that's JFK and LBJ.
Yeah. Now, just to clarify for viewers, because we see the packaging of television, of teams and television as, well, it's normal. But can you just talk, I know you're an expert in the field of sports business, that really these are separate businesses, and that's not allowed under law for businesses to combine their efforts, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, both the 61 Broadcast Act and the 66 merger, basically the Sherman Antitrust Act could have stopped them. They needed an act of Congress. They got the act of Congress. They needed the presidential signature, so they're legalized monopolies. As Pete Rozelle said when he opened up in the 1986 USFL NFL antitrust trial before Judge Peter K. Leisure, Foley Square, Southern District of New York, sports leagues are natural monopolies. Well, they're really not natural monopolies. They have to be given cover, like the Supreme Court of the United States did in 1922 with baseball.
Yeah. Presidents in baseball, is it FDR? We've spoken about football and the Olympic movement. Can you shine a light as to more than just what FDR did?
Not